Hello and welcome to Stories from My Drinking Days. My name's Harry Fell and I'm the founder of No Low Cocktails and Bars. We're joined today by Colette Safhill, who's the founder of Myth Alcohol-Free Spirits and Goat Functional Energy. As if that wasn't enough, she's also a psychotherapist and is studying towards her doctorate, which is amazing. That's a lot to be doing. And you've got kids. We should say you've got quite a few kids as well.
Yeah, I've got a bit of a collection of children. Yeah, I think maybe people often ask me how I do so much. And I think some of that is just addiction. You know, when I stopped drinking, there were a lot of hours left in the day, and that's never changed for me. I think some people, maybe it changes. I don't know if it goes with neurodivergence, but I seem to have the ability to do a lot of things all in one go, and I get bored very, very easily.
Yeah. And so are you neurodivergent then?
I had this conversation yesterday, actually. I don't know, because everybody seems to be right now. And logically, if everyone's neurodivergent, it's no longer divergent. I certainly think differently from a lot of people. I think in a very straight line, so I can come across as rude sometimes. I never intend to be rude, but I can do. And I'm quite impatient, so that would probably fit with an autism, maybe. Everyone's ADHD right now, so everyone would say, oh, it's ADHD, but I don't think so, because I've got hyperfocus. So probably. Someone was speaking to me yesterday and they just assumed I was autistic and kind of offered it that way. But I've not been diagnosed, and I wouldn't look for a diagnosis. I don't think it's helpful. I'm not sure diagnosing human experience, kind of pathologizing normal existence, is the way forward for society. That's just my belief. But
yeah. And also, I mean, I guess maybe it's different if you were a child, but you know, you've lived as you now for
a long time,
quite a few years. Yeah. So yeah, you're kind of, you know how to cope with different situations, don't you? So
I think also you need to question who's it for, who is a diagnosis for. So I can describe the way my brain works quite easily, actually. It's a bit, you know, those Japanese bullet trains.
Yeah.
Well, I could have 1,000 of them. I could have 10 of them. I could have 10,000 of them, and they're all identical and they all run at the same speed, but they all run on their own tracks, and I can just jump between them. And that's exactly what it's like. What I can't do is stop them. I can't make that happen, but it's not chaos. It's not like a Parisian roundabout or anything like that. Now, my friend has got really intense ADHD, and she is like talking to a Parisian roundabout. It's quite a challenge. My brain's not like that. It's very linear. It's just there's always a lot of traffic going at once, but all in one direction.
Yeah. That's fascinating. And we'll come back to all your businesses and what led you to do that, because that's a really fascinating topic. But tell me, do you remember when you started drinking alcohol?
I do, actually, and I don't often get asked when it started, or I don't often properly think back to it, because I often just say, oh, in my early 20s, but that's actually not true. I can remember I had a very difficult childhood, and I was moved around a lot, but I was at one point living with my father, and I can remember he had a bottle of sherry in a side cabinet, and I can remember drinking that when I was probably 8 or 9, something like that. So kind of primary school age.
Yeah.
And then I moved in with my mother, who was alcoholic. And I can remember drinking some of what was around, but not in the same way at all. I can remember at my dad's house, it feeling kind of warming and reassuring and safe. With this sherry. I can still remember it. I can even remember the cabinet, actually, but it wasn't like that at my mum's house, so I didn't have the same draw to it. And obviously, because she drank so heavily, I was quite averse to the impact of alcohol when I was living with her. And then I probably really picked it up with some commitment when I was really put some effort in when I was kind of 16, so 16, 17, but then I stopped again, and I didn't drink at all. But when I was sort of 18, 19, 20, I just stopped. It's not what I wanted. And then it kind of went properly downhill when I was about 22, 23, and I stopped drinking altogether when I was 28.
Excellent. So was there a reason that you kind of went back to it in your early 20s then, having sort of given up?
Well, I think that the problem is when we look back at things, the mind wants to make sense of it. So we can easily end up like hanging things on the biggest hook. Do you know what I mean? It's like, well, it must have been that, it must have been that, it must have been that. My first marriage was not an optimal event, and I had a baby and a toddler, and I'd just finished uni. I had no money. My marriage had broken down. All of those things, but that could just have easily led me to overeating or to doing drugs or gambling. It didn't. It took me to alcohol. So it took me somewhere, I think, maybe for comfort, maybe somewhere to hide. But why alcohol? I don't know. My mother died alcoholic when I was a child. We're Irish Catholic, so we can all kind of drink and sing and fight. So maybe it's a bit genetic. Maybe it's just because that's what society tells us we should do. So I don't really know. I was desperately sad and I was very lost and I was very scared in those years. And we all know that putting some alcohol on top of that's going to give you a great outcome.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's understandable though that people do drink in those sort of circumstances because you're trying to hide from it, aren't you, often?
Yeah. And it just wasn't how I wanted it. I wanted, like, you know, the mother care advert with like the mummy and the daddy and the nice room and the baby and a baby grow and all of that. And I just didn't get that. I was really skinned, like really poor. I was on my own. I didn't have family. My first husband had gone. And it was just awful. Like, every day was awful. My baby screamed without stopping for 6 months. And I had a toddler and there was just no way to function in that. You know, even looking back at it now, I genuinely don't know how I survived it. It's the single worst time of my life. Those kind of 3 years, but for the first year I didn't really know night from day because of the baby.
Yeah.
It was just awful, absolutely awful. I probably had postnatal depression looking back on it, but then anyone would have done. That was a perfectly normal response to the awful situation.
Yeah, absolutely. So what made you come out of that? What helped?
It was dramatic. I hear a lot of people's sober stories, and mine isn't like that. So I was 28, so it was nearly 23 years ago now. I was involved in a car crash that was my fault, drink driving. I was functioning. I just got to that tipping point of just not quite functioning. So I hadn't really picked up drinking with a passion until I was 23. I was obviously really good at it because 5 years later I totaled my car. I was arrested and put in the cells. And even that didn't really make a difference, not in the moment, because I was just a bit cross about it. You know, you don't know what I'm like, grandiosity. And when I came out, I was released the next day when I'd sobered up enough to be kind of interviewed. And then there was this 3-week period. And I think it's because I didn't go to work. My eldest 2 children, so I've gone on to remarry and have 2 more, but my eldest 2 children had gone to their fathers. So I had the framework that kind of held it together was gone. I didn't have the kids. I didn't have to get up for work. And I had 3 weeks of kind of a real descent. So I didn't know where I was or when I was or what time it was. I was throwing up in a bucket. I just don't clearly remember those 3 weeks. But it got to a Thursday and I remember thinking to myself, this is stupid, you've got to stop. So I just stopped there and then. And then 2 days later, I went into the DTs and I started hallucinating. I was sectioned under the Mental Health Act into a local NHS unit. My ex-husband, who I swear owed me no kindness at all, arranged for me to be moved to the Priory. And I spent the best part of 18 months really getting well. And even then, even when I went into the Priory, I was still like, I'm not alcoholic. That's not what's wrong with me. You don't know what's wrong with me. I've got PTSD, anything other than alcohol. And I met a therapist in there called Margaret. And I can remember her just saying to me really matter-of-factly, you know, just let it go, Colette. Let it go. It'll be all right. And I did. I'm AA, so part of the rehab was that they took us to fellowship. I've stayed in that. I did a year as an outpatient when I came out. I could never do that again. I was hallucinating solidly for about 4 weeks. I've got amnesia and all sorts of things. It was absolutely horrific. I thought I was going to die. And I don't have another recovery in me. So when I came out, I made sure that every single thing I did took me a step further away from a drink. So I stopped smoking. I changed my friends. I had to change my career, you know, all of those things.
Yeah. That's amazing. Well done for doing that. That's it takes that. I think that takes courage.
I think it would have taken more to have another drink. I can remember even now the hallucinating, and I can remember one of them. I felt like I was standing right on the very edge of hell, and I could look down. I could see it. I could see the fire. I could see the flames, and I knew it was coming for me. And that image has stayed with me for 23 years. And I always get this kind of, I'm just going to take a step back. I'm just going to take a small step away from that. And I mean, I had to completely rebuild. You know, I lost everything. I lost my job. I used to work in a bank. I lost my friends. I had to fight to get my kids back. I lost my house. I had no money. I mean, everything that I had so tightly held on to. And because I didn't have family, there's nowhere for me to go back to. I couldn't just knock on my parents' door and say, "Can I come in?" Because that wasn't my story. There was nowhere for me to go. I'd drunk away all my friends. I had to make this work myself. That was the scariest thing, really, and it was very raw. And the first year after I came out of rehab was very, very difficult.
Yeah. Oh, well done. As I say, I think that's very brave, and your story since, though, has taken a big upward turn. So was it soon after that you met your?
It wasn't a linear upward. No. More like snakes and ladders. Today he's not feeling very upward, if we're all being honest. What happened? Oh my God, so much happened. So I met my dad young, I was 28.
Yeah.
My first degree is in philosophy. And I mean, my first port of call was I had to get a job. I had to find some way to pay the bills, find somewhere to live, you know, all those sort of things. And there's not many things where having a legal section on your record in a year in rehab isn't going to look too bad. So I decided the best thing to do was to go and do a counselling course, and that I could go and work within kind of that rehab community. So the nature of my first degree meant I could do a postgrad add-on, which I did, and studied person-centred counselling at Essex. I did that. I liked it. I very carefully spent time making new friends, stuck really close to the fellowship, because for the first year, you know, I had people crossing the road to scream in my face and tell me what they thought of me. Because I did all the behaviours that go with alcoholism. I was talking to someone the other day and I said, looking at me now, you wouldn't see an alcoholic, but if you'd have seen me the day before I stopped, I'd have ticked all your boxes. So there's a lot of people with a lot of reasons to have an opinion, and they felt the need to share that. So I'd been sober maybe 5 years when I met Andy, my husband, and we got married, went on to have 2 more children. Our daughters are 13 and 14. That took some time and some space out of my life again. And I have to say, I found it quite difficult, because there was one awful point in my life where I had 2 teenagers, a baby and a toddler, and Andy had gone away to work. That wasn't a great year. And then we moved from the south up to the north. And then this isn't very well known actually about me, because it's not something I choose to talk about often. But when I moved up here, I was intending to start my own clinic, but unfortunately I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I'd only lived here about 4 days. And I was then ill for nearly 3 years, and I had a huge amount of surgery. And again, that just took a lot of capacity. So maybe it was 4 years ago, Andy and I were out for food, and someone offered me a Fanta or a Coke, or a conversation I didn't want to have. I just wanted a drink. And I just said to him, you know, how hard could this really be? You know, let's just make a drink. How hard could it be? And Andy is ever supportive and said, okay, darling. And that's what I did. And I didn't know what I was going to make, or how I was going to make it, or what it was going to look like. I had a couple of goes and they weren't very good. Then I had to go back down south for a few months for personal reasons. And then we had the pandemic, and all these things were happening. And then I went back to it. And it was when I went back to it, the no-low section had really grown. So it kind of had a place to live, and I could see what I wanted to make. And obviously I don't drink, so I'm not going to go and pick up a drink and try it and then replicate it. I just wanted to make a memory, and I wanted a bit of fun, and because it wasn't all bad. My drinking career wasn't all bad. It's easy when you get to the end of any relationship to say, oh, that was awful, let's just look at how it ended. But actually it wasn't, not all of it. And I wanted some of that fun again, and something pretty in a glass, and I wanted to feel included where I'd felt very excluded. So I went and made a Malibu, really, alcohol-free Malibu, because what screams fun and sunshine more than that? And that's kind of how it started. And then that had its own legs almost. And I made a dark one to go with the white one. I've just made some RTDs, some sober sundowners, and I also made this caffeinated vitamin drink at the same time. Because I wanted something a bit like an energy drink with claimable outcomes, but with nothing artificial in it, and I couldn't find it. So I thought, well, why not? There's another train on my train tracks. Let's pop that there. And that was a year ago. So I got the first trials of those last May, and I took the first commercial runs about this time last year.
And that's the goat.
That's Goat and Myth. They're both at the same time. They literally came through the door at the same time. And I've got my own clinic, so I run a clinic. I've also got a media presence with two of my friends. We work together, the doctor, the therapist, and the coach, and we've got retreats, and we wrote a book, and we do podcasts and all that kind of thing, sort of around hormones and menopause and sex and things like that. And what else do I do? I have got some property. I'm a landlady. So I do lots of things. I like to be busy, and obviously I've still got the same 4 children I started with.
Yeah, that just sounds unbelievably busy. I think that's so impressive. And I didn't realise that Goat had come out at the same time as Myth. So you did all 3 products then at the same time.
Yeah, all went through liquid formulation at the same time. And then obviously I'm doing my doctorate, but I don't know how many millions of years that's going to take. But and that's purely an ego thing. I just wanted to say doctor in front of my name. Yeah. You can get that is to do it. So I'm doing that, and I've actually just taken on a yoga course because I've always wanted to be able to teach yoga. So I've just started doing that as well.
I'm amazed. The amount of stuff you do is unbelievable. So if you become a doctor, then is that going to change the doctor, the therapist, and the coach?
Well, Angela, who is the doctor,
as
a medical doctor, we've been talking about this. So she's going to go and do a PhD. So she's going to be a professor, and then the professor, the doctor, and the coach. I think that's what we're aiming for. Our coach is amazing. She's a former world's strongest woman, and she's just like, well, I'm going to need to be strong just to lift all your certificates. So that's always worth a listen. Actually, it's called the doctor, the therapist, and the coach. And that was around us wanting to demystify the roles that we inhabit, and so people can see us as people, as women, because it can be quite scary when someone goes and sees, a menopause specialist, a doctor, a therapist, a physical coach, a nutritionist, any of those things. And we just kind of we're best friends, and we were talking one day and we realized that what we do overlaps massively, and we hear the same questions a lot in our clinics, and we were just like, well, why don't we find a way to offer that out? Yeah, brilliant. And so you do retreats as well, do you? Just starting next year. It's actually just deciding, because although we hear the same questions, we respond very differently. So it's been about deciding how we inhabit our own spaces. So our logo is like a Venn diagram, and it's where we intersect, but also we had to really look at the boundaries of where we don't step on each other's professions as well. Yeah. That was a slightly longer conversation than we were hoping for, shall we say? I think we're there now. Yeah. So how are your retreats going to work then? What are you going to be bringing to the retreats, and who are they aimed at? So they're aimed at women, and it's women and their bodies. So it doesn't have to be menopause. I'm very conscious of menopause because I see lots of things now about menopause. And I have ladies come to my clinic who feel invaded because they felt that they don't want it discussed. It belongs to them. I know for myself, I went through surgical menopause when I was 38. So a lot of what I see and hear wasn't relevant to me. I know people who feel they're not doing menopause properly because suddenly they can't skydive, and actually they were looking forward to that time in their life where they could just kind of get a cardigan. So there's all of those things, but essentially there's going to be a run up to it. So a 4-week process whereby there'll be one-to-ones with me, with the doctor, with the coach, and then there'll be a 5-day retreat which will cover nutrition, physical exercise, a lot of psychoeducation, a lot of medical education, that kind of I can't remember what the word is now, but the context we live in, so kind of how we actually use our bodies, being your own friend, stepping away from that inner critic, how you can put that together, but being your own expert. So take what you want to take, you don't have to take all of it. At the end of the 5 days, then there'll be another 4-week runoff where we stay in touch and we continue with a session once a week. Yeah. So hopefully so it's not just a retreat where you come out of your life, drink a few juices for 3 days and then go back to your Mackies and your telly. It's more about a bit of a reset and deciding what you need, because I certainly have people come to me who have medical issues rather than and would benefit from that first. Or with the coach, she has people who come to her and actually they could do with having a better look at what their goals are, and they were better off coming to me first. So it's not about it being one or the other. Some of it's a bit of an order. So maybe you could do a hormone panel. Maybe you're not actually losing your mind. Maybe it is your hormones, or maybe it's what you're eating or what you're not eating. And we're all a little neurodiverse. It's Angela who's got the head like the Parisian roundabout. And Gemma's like a single stage coach. She's entirely focused on like single point focused, in a way that neither myself nor Angela are. So I think it helps to see the person behind the role and just to understand that we're not really your experts. We just happened to do that when we went to uni, and this is what we know, what resonates with you.
Yeah, brilliant. Oh, that sounds like a lot more than a retreat. That sounds like possibly life-changing for somebody.
Well, I think so. We are genuinely quite passionate about the therapist I told you, Margaret, when I was in Priory. She saved my life. There's no question. This and everyone's drinking is different and everyone's story is different. But for me, I believe that alcohol is what would kill me. Even when I was diagnosed with cancer, I wasn't scared of the cancer. Alcohol is really what came for me. When I was a child, my mother died alcoholic when I was 10. People die from this and they die young. So I believe it can change lives. I know Angela, she's an expert in sort of sex hormones and menopause and things like that. That absolutely changes lives. Gemma, the coach, is the most empowering person I have ever known. Not overly empathic, I'll be honest. She's best known for saying, drink more water and no one cares if it hurts. But she just gives you your power back.
Yeah.
So I do believe it could be, and that sounds quite egotistical, but I do believe as long as you've got some skin in the game and you're ready to take that step, because no matter who you see, no matter how much you pay them, unless you do your you'll get the same you've got. That's just how it works.
Yeah.
There has to be change for change.
Yeah. And I think for a lot of people giving up alcohol, the first step, I think, is you have to be really honest with yourself and you have to be ready for that change. I know personally, I've given up a few times and always gone back. So, obviously I wasn't ready to completely give it up.
Yeah, and society makes it difficult. I was walking around the supermarket the other day, and I was just walking like down the bread aisle or whatever it was, and they were doing tastings at the end of the aisle, and this person, not her fault, that's what she was standing there to do, just kind of put a tumbler of whiskey under my nose or something. In what world is that okay? It's 11 o'clock in the morning. I'm in the co-op or the Tesco's or wherever it was I was. I didn't ask for that. Now, I'm so far away from my last drink, although we still are only ever one day at a time. But what if I wasn't? What if I was having a wobble? What if I didn't ask for that?
Yeah.
And society, I was listening to the radio driving somewhere the other day, and I think it was Sarah Cox or someone like that. And she was like, "Oh, mummies, well done. It's Friday, wine o'clock." Or so where's that okay? And what I see a lot in my clinic is people come in and it looks like they're on fire, like actually on fire with flames. And they don't want to step out of the fire, they just want it not to hurt. And that's where we put the drink and the food and the spending and all of that, just so we can't feel the pain. And I actually think that's the saddest bit, because it helps us to stay where we're not happy. It's an opportunity loss. You know, these are messages that we are being told that our environment isn't right for us. It's not safe for us. We're not happy here. We could make changes, but tip a bit of prosecco on top of that, and it'll be okay till tomorrow. Except it won't.
Yeah. So, in your clinic, then, do you still deal with a lot of alcoholism issues, or is
not
it
really,
quite diverse?
No, I work with a lot of stakeholders. So I'm a trainer for the mental health first aid training. You know, the people who train the trainers to train. I do that. I do a lot of psychoeducation. I work with pretty much anything. So I'm qualified to work in adoption, in sexual abuse, in domestic violence, addiction, depression. I'm EDMR trained. I'm trained in just about everything. I'm even sand tray trained, which always makes my husband laugh. He's like, "Oh, that's what the NHS needs, another sand tray." That kind of transpersonal way of working. The only people I don't work with are children, actually. That's not my schnizzle. And I've stopped working with couples as well, just out of choice. But I don't tend, because the thing is, when you get like someone's rap sheet, I'm coming in with alcoholism, or I'm coming in with this, or that doesn't give you a picture. It doesn't give you, that's just like a headline. Well, what else is going on in your life? Do you feel under attack? Well, look up and let's see if you are. Is it actually a relationship issue? So, okay, you've come in with your drink, but is your issue a trauma issue, or is it a childhood issue, or is it that you've just actually not quite got the skills to get through your day? I know when I stopped drinking, the thing that I struggled with the most was I just didn't have the skills to be a grown-up. I didn't know, I can vividly remember not knowing where to buy a tea towel from, actually. So some of those things, some of those places, and just to be told that it's okay. It's just okay. So I tend not, I certainly don't specialize in alcohol, because my own experience doesn't make me an expert. It's just my own experience.
Yeah. And so since you launched Myth and Goat, they've both done phenomenally well.
Thank you.
And you've won quite a lot of awards, haven't you?
I did. I did indeed, yeah. That was a surprise. Wasn't expecting that. That was my husband, actually. So when I first took the first kind of trial run of Myth, it turned up, it was the coconut myth, and I had this sudden kind of, what if no one likes it? You know, like a little girl and nobody comes to your party. I was like, I don't think I could cope with that. I can't. I felt really exposed, and so I kind of left it in the garage. And Andy was, look, sweetheart, you're going to have to do something with it. And my poor husband, honestly. He always looks like he's just strapped in like this. He, without me knowing, had sent it off to the IWSC, and his reasoning afterwards was, look, we're going to test the market this way, see if people like it or not. He knew that I wasn't going to send it off myself, because I would have been mortified if nobody had liked it. I spent 2 years making this, and it was, at that point, it was, a huge amount of money. It's been so much more since, but anyway. And it came back that I won the trophy globally. So this hadn't launched, wasn't my sector. One of the most recognized awards you can get. So I got the gold, and then I took the trophy. But I kind of didn't know what that meant at that point, because I didn't know the sector. So that was my start. That was my starter, my out of the gate starter. And then it was almost like I felt I had to do something with it then. And even now people drink it and they'll go, oh, I can remember when I was 16 on a beach in Greece, or something like that. It still has that feel about it.
Well, that's an amazing start, and obviously you're only a year into the journey with Myth and Goat. So what are the plans?
Well, they're two very separate businesses, so they've got two very separate plans. I didn't do much with Goat, I'll be honest, because everything was about Myth. So my biggest problem right now is funding. I really need to be going out for funding. That's not going so well, if I'm really honest with you. Myth is beginning to get some traction. I sell quite a lot overseas. I'm still struggling a bit with the UK market. It's I don't understand it. I don't understand the distribution network. I don't understand why, if I've got the award-winning, I won the World Alcohol-Free Best Spirit globally. Yeah. I don't understand why, if it's considered the best, universally everyone likes it, bartenders love it, it's really versatile, why it isn't stocked. And that is to do with distribution, and that is to do with the positioning of other brands and the way things are funded. So it's kind of not fair, and I don't get that. Maybe that's that autism. I just don't understand it, and I struggle with that as a person. So I have been involved with the Club Soda incubator. I'm hoping that's going to begin to pay off, and I think I've suddenly got some listings from that. I am looking for distributors, wholesale distributors. I'm looking for pub chains. I've just made some RTDs, so sober sundowners. Got a margarita, a watermelon margarita, and I'm just about to launch a rum sour next week. Hoping that's going to bring me into the off-trade, at-home market, gifting, maybe travel. I think as long as I can get some sales with Myth, some repeatable sales, then it's kind of okay as it is. But I think what people don't realise is I don't have a team. It is just me. So I kind of need other people now. So you've got some quite big brands with quite a lot of funding, and they've got whole teams globally, and I haven't. So that's quite a challenge. With Goat, I've done that differently. I've kind of gone into community. So I didn't do the same kind of marketing spend with Goat. I just went to events and handed cans out to see who liked it, to get feedback, to make changes. I brought out a sugar-free one, a cherry flavour sugar-free one a few weeks ago, which is absolutely loved. Everyone loves it. I'm just about to do a sugar-free mango. We've still got the original Goat, which is now called the Original Goat. And I'm just about to look to getting into bricks and mortar. Same thing though, how do you actually make that happen when there's a stranglehold on distribution? You pay a fortune for shelf space. I've not got that kind of money. Retailers aren't behind this. It's small batch produced, so it's really expensive to make. And it's one thing hearing people say, I want an all natural product, but then the retailers need to understand that comes at a cost. Natural caffeine costs a huge amount more than synthetic caffeine. Natural flavour costs a huge amount more than synthetic flavour. So that is a challenge as well. So I'm going out for funding with Goat. Goat, I think, has the capacity to grow very quickly. Because it's got claimable outcomes. It will support everything from your immune system, your heart function, metabolism, energy yield. A nutritionalist reviewed the label the other day and said it will help aid with weight loss because of the green coffee in it. All sorts of things.
Yeah.
So I'm partly strategizing and partly hoping for the shoemaker and the elves. Today is very much a shoemaker and elves day, if anybody's interested. I think because I can come across as very confident and very managed, and that's just learning from being a child. People can't hear my inner scream of, oh my God, what have I done? I've got no money left, like none at all. I spend all my money doing this. I don't know what we're going to do for Christmas because there's no money. We just went to Butlins for the weekend when we were hoping to go start diving in the Maldives or something. I'm working approximately 23 hours, about 8 days a week, as is my husband in his business. And I currently can't quite see the light at the end of the tunnel. So I'm not amazingly sure how this is going to play out.
But you have got a fantastic product.
Thank you.
Well, you've got 3 fantastic products.
4 now. So, actually, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 now.
There we are. And growing almost every day by the sounds of it.
Actually, I must say as well, Gemma. I must say Gemma, because having just said I don't have a team, I have Gemma. Okay, Gemma Simmons is my graphic artist, and if you've seen all my artwork, and she does all of it. She is incredible. She really is. And she does the doctor, the therapist, and the coach for me. She does my clinic for me. She does all the drinks. Everything you see that comes out, Gem has done. And if I open my back gate and look down the alleyway, I can see her front door. When I'm away at shows and things, she feeds my cat. So whilst I don't employ her, I pay her kind of as she makes things. I couldn't do it without her. I genuinely couldn't. It's not one of those things where, I could get another designer. I actually couldn't do it without her.
Yeah.
She really is quite incredible. I came back from a show the other day, and she'd left some Maltesers on the table for me.
So you just need a couple more gemmers.
I need a couple more gemmers.
And a couple of people with deep pockets.
Yeah, I need some funding. I need some sales. I need some repeatable sales, some bar chains, and I don't need much actually. So if I had maybe a couple of big chains for Myth, or something like, I don't know, LNER or Grand Central or something like that for the RTDs, and then if I had even just 2 retailers for goat, I'm looking to put goat into niche retail. So if anybody's listening to this and you have the kind of shop that's something like a tattooist or a barber's or a bike shop or a trainer's shop or a vape shop or whatever that is, that's where I want goat to go into.
Yeah.
And I can make, a particular goat for your shop and all sorts of things. So a lot of the people who are my influencers have got their own goat heads, and I can see that for goat. So that's kind of what I'm aiming for, I guess, this year and the beginning of next.
Yeah. And so where you mentioned overseas, where have you had most success then with Myth overseas?
North America and Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah, without exception. It seems to be a fairer market. People buy my drink because they like it. They don't buy it if they don't like it. It's just that simple.
Yeah.
And it isn't like that here. I've had a few things here where I know that I've gone to be listed and then the listings come down for someone else, even though my brand was the preferred brand. A lot of that's to do with distribution, but most of it's to do with funding and the weight. If you've got a lot of weight behind your brand, then that will count for more than the flavor profile. The other thing I've got a personal issue with is things like the Gordon Zero, things like that. My issue is because the bottle is exactly the same, so by definition it is advertising alcohol. When you see a bottle of Gordon's, it looks like a bottle of Gordon's. So subliminally, that's what your brain tells you. And it can be advertised where you can't advertise alcohol because it's zero. As well as the fact that it's quite dangerous. I think you could easily pick up the wrong bottle and not know. And I do use the word danger carefully. I spent a year in a secure hospital. It's my choice if I put myself in that kind of danger again. So allow it to be my choice. Don't try and sideswipe me. Don't be underhand about it.
Yeah.
Those ones I have got a problem with. And I've got a real problem with like the no low sector. So I was somewhere the other day and there was something that was 10%, but it was no and low because it was low for that product or low for that sector. That's not okay. If you were allergic to peanuts and I gave you half a peanut, you'd still be dead. That's not okay. That's not for someone else to make that decision for me.
No, low does. I saw something advertised the other day. They were advertising it as lower alcohol, but again, it still had 10%, and it was just as you say, because normally that product would be about 40%, but 10% still a lot of alcohol.
You find it in the free from section as well. Slightly off track here, but one of my daughters has a really extreme form of celiac disease. I spend a lot of time in hospital. And if you go into some free from places now, it will say free from, and it'll be the same color as the gluten free, but actually it's free from dairy, but it isn't free from gluten or it isn't free from wheat. So those kind of things, these are people's lives. The other one that I saw recently, and actually someone I know relapsed on this, was the hard seltzers, like the hard waters. And the can had the calories in a bigger medallion than it had the ABV, and it just looked like fruit water. You genuinely wouldn't have known it was alcoholic. When is that okay? So whereas when I was doing my drinks, I know one of the things trading standards were really hard on me was making sure that nobody could accidentally assume it was alcohol and therefore would feel hard done by or shortchanged. But it doesn't appear to work the other way around. And I wasn't allowed to use the word intoxicating on it because I wanted to say intoxicatingly non-alcoholic, but apparently the word intoxicating belongs to alcohol. Apparently the word drink belongs to alcohol. Are you having a drink? Oh, you're not having a real one. Because people often say to me, don't you drink? I said, of course I do.
Yeah.
I'd be dead otherwise, wouldn't I?
Yeah. It is shorthand though, isn't it? When we say if I say I don't drink, I mean I don't drink alcohol. We do use it as shorthand, and it is ridiculous because obviously we do all drink. Yeah.
But this is how it's normalized, you know, and it's not just alcohol. I mean, I was talking to someone the other day. So the little town in North Yorkshire I live in, at the end of, as you come into the town now, they've just built this massive McDonald's and this new like petrol station that sells loads of stuff, and it's got a 24-hour off license on it. Well, that no town needs that. I'm so pleased that wasn't a thing when I was drinking, because I wouldn't have survived it. And I was talking to a friend of mine, and her issue's food. And I said, I can't believe that there's a 24-hour off license. I mean, what good's going to come of that? And she said, Colette, there's a 24-hour McDonald's next door. And of course, because that's not my thing. Food's not my thing. I didn't notice it. So I'm not really saying that it's just about the alcohol. I know other people have other things, and I just worry a bit about this. Kind of, it's almost like we're pushed to overconsume all the time, and our choices are being taken away.
Yeah, I think you're right. It is more about everything, isn't it? Just I'm interested, when you obviously gave up drinking. There weren't that many.
Much more gently than it was, by the way. It was more ripped from me, like my soul. But
well, yeah. There weren't really many non-alcoholic substitutes out there, were there, at the time? Sort of.
No, and I didn't drink anything, so I just drank water and coffee for about 8 years, and I was fine with that, actually. And I think in some ways it helped. So I do wonder sometimes if non-alcoholic drinks are actually only for non-alcoholic people. So I tend to avoid, I don't drink the lagers or anything like that, because I used to drink a lot of lager when I was drinking, and I tend not to drink the wines for the same reason. It's a bit too close to my profile. I think you need to be aware. I think it really is, you need to do what's right for you. I've noticed the sober space has recently become a bit sanctimonious in itself. Oh, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. This is the only way, I'm the right way. That's no good for anyone, you know. We all got to drinking how we drank, and we all get to sober how we get to be sober. I personally, I spend a lot of time socializing now. I'm out a lot now, and I just want to have something relevant in my glass. So, but I think there was Caliber. Billy Connolly used to advertise it. I remember that.
Yeah.
But no, I'm not big on calories, so I wouldn't have had anything that was necessarily just empty calories. And I didn't go out. I didn't go out for about 5 years. Fellowship meetings. So it wasn't my thing. And I think it's really nice, particularly if maybe you're a grey area drinker, or you want to like not have a drink, you not have an alcoholic drink for this drink, or it's like an ages stages things, maybe pregnancy or something like that, then it can be quite nice in that space as well. But like I say, that wasn't my profile.
Yeah. And again, I think it's being really honest with yourself, isn't it, about actually what you can do and what you can't do, and what is going to.
And to reassess it, because it can change, you know, in times of stress, it can change. I know quite a few people maybe have been sober for 20 years and then something happens and they relapse, or people who decide not to drink for a few years and then they decide they are going to drink moderately, or all of those things, you know.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's fascinating, isn't it? And, you know, obviously your experience and mine are quite different. I was more a grey area drinker, but I know I can't moderate. Yeah. So I choose not to.
Yeah, and it's knowing that, isn't it? Yeah, some people do moderate. I mean, you know, some people do. Back to my friend with food, you know, she's like that with food. She just can't. So she just avoids all sugar all the time because it seems to tip her over the edge. Whereas I've got friends who'll have a bag of Maltesers in the fridge for a month. You know, they'll have one a week or something. Yeah. I think it depends what your Achilles heel is.
Yeah, definitely. So you've mentioned your husband Andy. Does he do a lot with the businesses? You know, with the Myth and Goat?
My poor husband. I think everybody knows Andy. Someone said to me the other day, "Oh, your Andy's face looks a bit lived in." So Andy runs his own business. He frequently reminds me he runs an international business, and he does have his own life. In fact, he's heading off to Hong Kong, I think, next week, or Singapore. Andy is the single most supportive human being who has ever existed, and I've got no idea how he lives with me. And I just always feel like apologising. I'm so sorry, Andy. He is very, very supportive. supportive. His one personal possession that he adores is his camper van, and he had it wrapped entirely in goat logos, like just completely wrapped. He is up at 5 o'clock in the morning putting things in boxes for me. He deals with suppliers, and he's very diplomatic. So if it needs diplomacy, he does it. That's not my gift, really. And he is the most supportive person in the world. Most people know him. Most people have met him. Most people have spoken to him. He doesn't work for the business. I don't pay him. He just, I don't even know if he really thinks it's going to work. He just really loves me so much.
That's brilliant. That's fantastic. And I think it's going to work. I think, they're both brilliant products.
Actually, I'll tell you something about Andy that not a lot of people know. So when Andy asked me to marry him, 16 years ago now, I said no, and it's because he used to drink. Andy's not got a drink problem. But I didn't want alcohol in the house, so I won't have alcohol in my house. So he's never, ever had another drink. He just stopped that day. And people often say to him, oh my God, that's amazing that you did that. And he always says, you might want to look at your priorities, because my wife's certainly worth more than a glass of wine.
Yeah.
What matters to you the most?
Yeah.
So
that is a lovely way to look at it. That is brilliant.
I should also say he's astonishingly good looking. So. I often catch sight of him and just think, oh, he's nice. Oh, he's mine. But he's an absolute babe magnet. Whenever we do anything, he's always surrounded by women. And I was talking to one the other day, and I went, oh, whenever I leave the stall, he's surrounded by women. And she went, oh, well, he looked lonely. He's not. He's not lonely. He's just on the cadge.
Bless him.
Yeah, bless him.
Yeah, bless him. Well, I know you have got a busy day coming up, so I could talk to you for hours, Colette, but thank you so much for joining us today. We can't wait to see what happens next with Myth and Goat, and your retreats and everything else you're doing, and all your bullet trains going off in lots of different directions.
Straight directions, all in one direction. All heading that way.
Not different
directions.
But it's been lovely to speak to you. We will put all of the links for Colette's different businesses in the notes. And we wish you the best of luck. So thank you for joining us. And that's been Stories from My Drinking Days with me, Harry Fell, and Colette from Myth and Goat. Thank you.
Thank you.